Okay, thank you so much. So he hasn't started yet. Yeah, it says Shul office accounting. And then there's, not on. There's a woman.
Okay, good morning. Sorry for a little of the delay. Parshas Va'era. Second Aliyah and third Aliyah is where we are. Let's get to the exact spot on the promotion. Page 320 in the art scroll. Sheni and Shlishi. We're going to do Sheni and Shlishi for today's shiur. Sheni it lists a number of it's a lineage. It's Reuven, Shimon, then Levi, and it gives us the whole lineage all the way to Moshe and Aharon. We're going to talk about that at the very end. But jump to 322. Okay? Pasuk Chavav. Hu Aharon u'Moshe, asher amar Hashem lahem, hotziu es b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim al tzivosam. Everybody sees this on page 322, Pasuk Chavav. Who comes first in this listing? Hu Aharon u'Moshe, right? Okay. Then continues on. Next Pasuk. Heim hamidabrim el Paro melech Mitzrayim lotzi es b'nei Yisrael mitzrayim. Who? Moshe v'Aharon. Inverted. First pasuk said Aaron first. Second pasuk says Moshe first. That is going to be the question that we're going to focus on right now. Why does it one pasuk say Moshe first, Aaron second, or Aaron first, Moshe second? Famous Rashi that the Rav quotes, of course. Everybody quotes this. It teaches us. Let's take a look in Hu Moshe ve'Aaron. That. One second, where is it? That they are shakul, that they are considered here. Hu Aaron and Moshe. It's in Pasuk Chavav. Hu Aaron and Moshe. Asher Amar Yesh Mekamot Shemakdimim Aaron and Moshe. V'Yesh Mekamot Shemakdimim Moshe leAaron. There are places in the Torah that have one or the other first. Why would Moshe come first, Aaron come second, or Aaron come first, Moshe come second? Lomar lecha, it is to teach us, sheshkulin ke'echad, they were of equal value. They had equal stature. That's what Rashi says. And now the Rav understands this pasuk much more than just a textual comment in the Torah of one pasuk here, one pasuk there. He sees it as an unbelievable platform to discuss styles in Jewish leadership. There's a Moshe style, there's an Aaron style. And they were both necessary throughout Jewish history. And then the Rav comes to a comment about our own time, if you will, our century, our time. And how is Jewish leadership today reflected in this discussion of Moshe and Aaron? So Moshe and Aaron come first, or Aaron comes first, wondering what this means way beyond the pasuk. The Rav says the following. The Rav says you have two styles in Jewish leadership. One he calls the Rav, Rosh Hashiva, if you will, and one he calls the Rebbe, the Hasidic Rebbe, if you will. Two different styles in teaching. Both are teachers. Both are leaders. A leader in Jewish life has to be a teacher. He has to be able to teach. If he doesn't teach, he can't be a leader, which is a fascinating comment in its own right, because we don't perceive it that way, do we, always in Jewish leadership? But leadership requires that you have to be a teacher. You have to be imparting a message. But there are two different types of styles. There is the quote unquote, the Rav Rosh Yeshiva, Rav hyphen Rosh Yeshiva, and then the Hasidic Rebbe. The Rav Rosh Yeshiva style is an intellectual teacher par excellence. The second, the Hasidic Rebbe, if you will, is an emotional, charged leader for all intents and purposes. Moshe plays the role of which one? Which one? Which style? Clearly, he's the Rav Rosh Yeshiva. What do we call him? What's the title? Rabbeinu. He is the ultimate intellectual teacher of all. It is true, he has a sense of royalty, though he's not called Melech. We don't call Moshe HaMelech, right? Like David HaMelech, Shlomo HaMelech, though he does have a sense of royalty. How do I know that? Because at the very end of Vizos HaBracha, the very end of the Chumash, what do we have? A statement, Vayihi Vishurun Melech. And many of the Mefarshim say, who is the Vayihi Vishurun Melech? And there was a Melech in Yeshurun in Klal Yisrael. Who is the Melech? Some say it means Hashem, yes, but some say it means Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu at the very end of his life is called Melech, but we don't refer to him as Melech. We refer to him as Rabbeinu. What style does Aharon have? Aharon is not called Rabbeinu. Aharon is called HaKohen. Aaron Kohen Gadol, right? Aaron's Kohen Gadol. Who is the Kohen? Who is the Kohen? What is the role of the Kohen? Yaru mishpatecho liYaakov v'sarasecho liYisrael. We're told at the very end in Vizos HaBracha. Levi, remember, Kohen comes from Shevet Levi. What's the role of the Kohen? He's also a teacher. He's also a teacher. So you have two teaching styles, right? You have the Moshe style, the Aharon style, and we need both of them, which is the point that the Rav is making. They're both shakel. You need them both. You can't do without one to the other. The Rav described two approaches, and he called them as follows. He didn't call them only just Rav, Rosh Yeshiva, and Hasidic Rebbe. He gave it a more precise definition. He called it king-teacher, saint-teacher. There's the king teacher style. There's the saint teacher style. Moshe was the prototype of the king teacher style. Aharon is the prototype of the saint teacher style. Both dedicated themselves to shaping and molding their followers, but they use different media. They employ different media to teach their followers. They both have similar objectives. Both the king teacher and the saint teacher have similar objectives, but their styles and their emphasis are totally different. The king teacher, this is profound insight that the Rav develops just from these psukim of Moshe, Aaron, Moshe. He says, king teacher focuses his efforts on the intellect, on the mind. His job is to stimulate the intellect. He analyzes, he classifies, clarifies, and transmits halacha in ultimate precision. His focus is on teaching texts. This approach throughout the generations is best manifested by whom? By a Rambam, the Gra, Reb Chaim Brisker, and all of the great Rosh Yeshiva and Rishonim and Achronim ad hayom hazeh. Those are the intellects of our people. They are the king teacher, focusing on precision, classification, analysis, right? Transmission of halacha in its ultimate precision. But then we have the saint teacher. This style is a totally different style than the king teacher. He also teaches texts, but he directs his students to imbibe what the Rav coined the intangible soul of the Torah. The intangible soul of the Torah. This is what the Rav calls, quote unquote, the mysterious heartbeat of the Torah. The saint teacher is interested in teaching, he teaches texts, but he looks at the text totally differently. He's not classifying, he's not clarifying, he's not analyzing halachic in its ultimate precision. He's searching for the intangible soul of the Torah. To appreciate this component of the Torah, the saint teacher communicates not with the intellect per se, but with the heart and I quote the Rav, the saint teacher creates a society of intense personal piety and subliminal closeness to God. His intense personal piety is the focus of the saint teacher. The emphasis of the saint teacher, I should stop and ask you, everybody, those on Zoom and those here in the room, the saint teacher, is he focusing more on prayer or more on study?
Prayer.
Definitely prayer. The same teacher is going after, quote unquote, the intangible soul of the Torah. The intangible soul of the Torah will be found in, if you will, the praying experience versus the intellectual experience. Totally different. The emphasis of the same teacher is going to be more focused on prayer than on study. The Rav notes the audiences are two different audiences, aren't they? Who's the saint teacher teaching? Who's the king teacher teaching? Two different audiences. The king teacher speaks only to a select few. They are the intellectually capable, the intellectually elite. I know that now in our society of what's going on with all colleges, etc., elite intellect has a new definition, right? Okay, filled with a lot of politics. But there was a time, and where the intellectual elite, right, are the important. But how many are intellectually elite? You know, when everybody, in particular the Haredi community, dreams of the world that was in Europe, the world that was did not have kolalim for every Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I said I was going to use a different expression, but every, person in the community. No, he didn't have that. That wasn't, who was in the kollel in Europe? The intellectually elite. There were very few members of kollalim in Europe. The regular balabas went to cheder, and maybe by 13, he was out of school already. If he was intellectually a genius. So the Rebbe noted, and he was given a personal relationship with the Rav of the town. And as soon as he outgrew that Rav's capability, he went to the next town. He would learn privately. It was a one-on-one. It was a king-teacher approach, right? Totally for the intellectually elite. These are the scholars who understand abstract halacha and scientific concepts. Very few people are like that. It's a very limited group. Very bright, very talented, but most important, it's limited. How do the masses feel about this group? Despondent, because they're not part of that group. They're not part of that group. They feel left out because, by definition, an elite group eliminates so many people. The same teacher, that's the king teacher, the Rav notes. The same teacher, however, is a teacher of the masses. The masses. All Jews have hearts that can be set aflame. Well, who says this? Chasidus. That's exactly the approach of Chasidus. This is what Chasidus promulgates. Everybody's heart can be set aflame. It argues that every Jew, even the ignoramus, is capable of finding Hashem. And they use a pasuk to defend themselves. They find a pasuk in Devarim, a very important pasuk. The Torah says this, a pasuk, Perek Daled, pasuk Chavtes, go to Devarim, turn to Devarim, Daled Chavtes, a very important pasuk. Actually, the Rav wrote an essay called, based on the opening of this pasuk, again, Daled Chavtes, so it's on page 964, Uvikashtem misham, as Hashem Elokecho Matzoso Kisidrishenu B'chol Levavachol B'chol Nafshecho. What does that mean? And from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him. And if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. Who is that referring to? A limited group? A limited elite group? No. Uvikashtem misham es Hashem Elokecho umatzoso. Everybody will find. What do you have to do? You have to have kisidrishenu b'chol levavachol b'chol nafshecha. You have to have a commitment it's without distinction based on ability or talent. Every Jew, the Rav therefore writes, hence, the teaching of the saint teacher is democratic. It's democratic, it's an approach, it's comprehensible, it's accessible to the intellectually uninitiated as well as to the philosopher. It's open to everybody, it's democratic. It's not limited to a small little group. The king teacher, however, confines himself to the Beis HaMedrash, speaking primarily to fellow scholars, the intellectual elite. If all of this is correct, then Moshe is what I would call the Litvish Rav, right? The Litvish Rosh Yeshiva, while Aharon is the Hasidic Rebbe. The Rav demonstrated this, and it can be seen in how the Torah describes Moshe and Aharon. This is brilliant in how the Rav notes it. Moshe describes himself when Hashem says, "You're my man." What does he say?
Not me.
We're going to see this, right? Not me, but what does he say? He defends himself by saying, "Not me." What does he say? Kvad peh. What's kvad peh mean? So listen how the Rav understands kvad peh. Moshe is describing not a physical limitation. Moshe is describing brilliantly, he says, Moshe was a kvad peh, a non-verbal person, not given to small talk. It's brilliant. What's kvad peh? He's not given to small talk. He's not easy at socializing. He's not easy at extensive negotiations. He was Rabbeinu. What's Rabbeinu? A scholar, a teacher, uniquely spiritually endowed, who communicated tersely with what he had to say. Moshe doesn't talk a lot. Moshe is not, he's not the party man. He doesn't do very well at social gatherings.
He did a 30-day Devar Torah.
What? Yes, he did. But everybody had to listen, right? And it wasn't a social gathering. Small talk wasn't Moshe. That's how the Rav understands kvad peh. It's not a physical limitation. The Medrash describes it, he put his hands on the coal, right? He's not a schmoozer. Kvad peh is not a schmoozer. Aharon is a schmoozer. Aharon does beautifully in the social gathering. Aharon is able, how does Chazal understand Aharon? He's the Ohev, how does Chazal in Pirkei Avos? Ohev Shalom v'Rodev Shalom. You can only be an Ohev Shalom and a Rodev Shalom if you know how to socialize, if you can talk with people, if you can interact with people. It's a social skill. And Aaron has it. How does Chazal say? Chazal says he's an Ohev Shalom v'Rodev Shalom. Remember the Medrash? He would see a husband and a wife who would have a fight, and he would go over to one of them privately and he'd say, I was speaking to your husband. He says he really wants to apologize. And then he'd run to the other one and he would say, I know she really wants to apologize. And that might not have been the situation, but he brought people he knew with the social art. That's how Chazal understand Aharon. So the Rav says, Moshe is the Rabbeinu, a scholar, a teacher, uniquely spiritually endowed, who communicated tersely. He didn't have much to say on a social level. He was a teacher primarily to whom? To Yehoshua. He had one student. He had Yehoshua, if you will. And after that, the Zekanim. These were the intellectually elite. To the others who are qualified, yes, to understand the intricacies of Torah and Halacha. He spoke. Right? Isn't that the way it was taught? That's the way Chazal understand. First, he would call in Yoshua, and he would teach Yoshua privately. Then he would call in the Ziknei Yisrael, and he would teach the Ziknei Yisrael. Then he would call in the next. And then it was dispersed by others. Others would now go and teach it, not Moshe. The prophet Malachi declares, however, what about the Kohen? The Kohen, Malachi says, Perik base, Pasuk Zayin in Malachi, he says, Ki sifsei Kohen yishmeru das. For a priest's lips shall guard knowledge. And here the Rav brilliantly uses this understanding. What is Ki sifsei Kohen? On the lips of Aharon. Aaron's the Kohen. He emphasizes Aaron's lips. What do you mean by Aaron's lips? Again, the pasuk says, "Kisif se choen yishmeru das." For a priest's lips shall guard knowledge. Aaron's lips, his persuasive style, his lips represent his persuasive style, his closeness to people. The lips are the ability to express oneself. His title was not Rabbeinu. Aharon is called HaKohen, which signifies the minister of God. He's the one who's able to bring people close, not via the intellect, but go back to what the Rav said. He calls it what was the Rav? He says the same teacher is the one who teaches the mysteries of the soul of the Torah, correct? He's the one who's teaching the mysteries of the soul of the Torah. The Rav then applies this to our modern day. So at the time of Moshe and Aharon, how does the Rav see this? The Rav sees we needed a Moshe, we needed an Aharon. Moshe had his unique talents. They were brilliant. They were and who follows in history? A Rambam, a Gra. They don't, what's the expression? They don't have patience for the ignorant. They right? What's the expression? There's an expression that I'm thinking of. They don't tolerate. They don't tolerate the people.
They don't suffer fools.
Thank you. They don't suffer fools. Thank you, Elizabeth. Exactly. They don't suffer fools well, and they don't. Now the Rav applies it, however, to our modern day. Our modern day, the Rav looks out, and I must tell you, it's a bit autobiographical, because the Rav, on the one hand, was a student of Moshe Rabbeinu. He was a student of the Rambam. He's a descendant of the Gra. He's grandson of Reb Chaim Brisker. And yet, he realizes he himself, he has to, what does the Rav do? The Rav saves Judaism in America. He saves Orthodoxy in America. He saves Torah Judaism in America. The Rav was the gift by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to America. Remember last week I told you, the Rav, an autobiographical comment of the lesson of davening. So often we think we know what we're davening for, but we end up saying the wrong things because we think this is what we need, right? So I gave you that autobiographical example of the Rav when he got his PhD in 1932 from the University of Berlin. Here, he's Rabbiner Doctor, the ultimate in the German school for a Rav, and he was begging to find a position. And in 1932, this is pre-Hitler's rise in 1933, in 1932, he is refused by every position he applies to. He's devastated. Here's Reb Chaim Brisker's grandson is Anikel, and he can't find a job, and he has a PhD from the most prestigious school in Europe at the time. It is the most prestigious University of Berlin, and he studied with the leaders of philosophy of the time. And the Rav can't get a job, and he's despondent. And his father says, stop wasting your time there. Come to America. The Ramosha is already a Rosh Yeshiva at what's going to become Yeshiva University. It's Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchanan, right? It's REITs. REITs exists, not yet Yeshiva University. And Yeshiva University is just beginning to start. Rabbi Revel Zichrono Libracha is just founding Yeshiva University, Yeshiva College, not university, it's Yeshiva College. And he says, come, I will find you a job. He initially finds him, by the way, a job, not in New York, not in Boston. Do you know where he is first? No, the Rav was supposed to become a Rosh Yeshiva in Chicago at what we call today Skokie, Beis Medrash LaTorah. It wasn't Skokie in those days. It was on the west side of Chicago. It was Beis Medrash LaTorah. And while he's on the boat, they telegraph him, Rabbi Sugarman's father-in-law, Rabbi Oscar Fassman, Rabbi Chaim Fassman, Zichrono Livracha's father, was the president eventually he was the president. He wasn't the president then, but he describes how they sent a telegram to the boat to tell Rabbi Soloveitchik it was the depression. It was the depression. It was 1933, 1932. They didn't have the money to pay him. They couldn't meet the bills. They couldn't hire a new Rabbi Soloveitchik, even though, wow, things right. many ways. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you look at it and you say, wow, thank God they couldn't pay him, because the Rav then ends up on the East Coast where his influence is unbelievable. And he builds, when he gets off the boat, his father tells him, you're going to Boston. I found you a position to be chief rabbi of Greater Boston. So the Rav goes to Greater Boston, right? And the Rav, and then his father dies soon after he arrives. And not soon. He arrives in 33. And Reb Moshe dies in 1941, I believe. And then the Rav assumes his father's position in Yeshiva University, which wasn't a given when he was appointed. There was a whole debate if they should hire Rabbi Yosef Ber to be and he got a 1-year contract.
Wow.
A 1-year contract. By the way, it was never, ever renewed. They stopped, they said, it's for a lifetime. After he proved who he was, they never brought it up again. And the board just kept on going with Rabbi Soloveitchik. Of course they did, but that was the Rav. And the Rav understood, yes, he was from that school, but how is he going to impart? How is he going to build a Maimonides? I want to ask you, in New England, an academy like that, how does he do it? Only with the Moshe style? Or does he have to also have an element of the Aharon style? And he says you have to fuse both. The Rav today, the Rosh Yeshiva today, can't be just Rav Rosh Yeshiva. He can't be king-teacher. He has to fuse into his personality an element of the king teacher with the saint teacher. And the Rav writes, nowadays, the rabbi, the contemporary teacher king, has absorbed many of the qualities of the Rebbe, not only teaching, but coming close to the people. The Rebbe, representing the modern teacher saint, now also emphasizes scholarship and the teaching role. He says it's reversed, by the way, too. The Hasidic Rebbe wouldn't be able to exist if he didn't become a real Talmid Chacham as well. So you have, for example, Ger Hasidus. The Ger lineage of the Rebbes were tremendous Talmidei Chachamim. And they're learned in every base medrash in the world, the Sfas Emes, the Chidushei Harim, the Sfas Emes, etc. They were outstanding. The Rebbe had to represent also a fusion of Torah. He couldn't just, the Sachachover, the whole dynasty of the Sachachover is learned in every base medrash ad hayom hazeh. The classic differences are still there, he writes, but the lines of demarcation are at times blurred. Jewish leadership is most effective when it combines the mind and the heart in the worship of God. So the Rav took one little notation in this week's Parsha. Is it Moshe and Aharon or Aharon and Moshe? Who comes first? And the statement of Rashi based on the Medrash, and the Rav built an edifice called Understanding Jewish Leadership. From the time of Moshe down to our day. Moshe representing the king teacher, Aaron representing the saint teacher, the differences of them, and then commenting to a great degree in an autobiographical fashion what the teacher, what the Rosh Yeshiva today, and what the Rebbe has to have. You can't be just a Moshe. You can't be just an Aharon. If you're completely just one over the other, what happens? You're not effective. You have to have both. Okay?
I just want, Rabbi, wasn't Moshe a disciplinarian also? Aaron was, but Moshe had to discipline through God.
Yeah, Moshe is the king teacher with all that represents. But he's not the social human being. He's not the guy that you want. You're not going to schmooze with him, right? You're not going to schmooze with him.
Can I ask a question?
He
Can I
did.
ask a question?
He had, your Ruchama points out that's already for Chumash Bamidbar. Which parsha? Bahaloscha, where Moshe has his burnout,
Right.
his rabbinic burnout in Parshas Bahaloscha. And what does he? And Ruchama is 100% find it. Ruchama, come on, find it in Parshas Bahaloscha. He has burnout. When does he have it? Right by Eldad Umeidad, right? and he says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right after the Hafuchim, Nunim Hafuchim, Vayiyam ki misonanim, Rabos ne Hashem, page 786, 788. And he turns to Hashem and he says, I cannot be the man who nurses these people, right? Lo uchal anochi levadi lo says, page 790. Lo uchal anochi levadi lo says, has kol hamazeh ki chavei mimeni, right? Yes, very good. Very good. Very, very, very good. Page 790. Does everybody see it? Take a look. 790. Rechama picked up on it beautifully. Lo uchal anochi levadi lo says, has kol hamazeh ki chavei is the same word. Kvad. He has a difficulty. He says, I'm not the social guy. He says it before that. He says, one second. Hey, Pasuk Yud Beis, page 788 in Bamidbar, Parshas La'aloscha. Anochi harisi es kol hamazeh im anochi yeliditihu. Did I give birth to these people? What, you want me to be a nursing mother? Ki tomare le elai sa'ehu bechaikecha kasher yisa ha'omein es hayonek alo adamo asher nishbata la'avosav.
He doesn't see it within his role.
He says that's right. His role is, as the Rav calls it, the king teacher, and his brother, the saint teacher. Saint, in other words, that's the charismatic, right? But the Rebbes, by the way, what do they call? They're known as Sadiqim, right? Sadiqim, that's the concept, right?
Rabbi, doesn't it change the dynamics between God and Moshe? The fact that now that's something he was delegating only to Moshe, he is now splitting between Moshe and Aaron?
He never
There must be repercussions.
he never designated Moshe to be both. He knows Moshe's talent, and Moshe is not to be anything but Rabbeinu. And they need to be, and they need to go together. Eventually, this will evolve, the Rav says, into history where the real impact today has to be a fusion of both. You have to have both. A real Rosh Yeshiva has to be able to also do the tish, if you will, the Friday night tish with the boys. He does. It's true. It's true. Continue on. Okay, next puzzle. Now,
by the way, means he's more loving and forgiving. He's not
right.
So exact in his measure.
Okay. Now let's take a look at 322. That's just, ladies, that was just the introduction to this year. That there was such a brilliant insight in the Rav of understanding Aaron and Moshe and leadership at Hayom Hazeh. But now let's take a look. Vayomer Hashem, the next Aliyah, page 322. Shlishi. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, Ani Hashem daber el Paro melech Mitzrayim es kol asher ani dover elecha. And Hashem sends him, go, you're going to speak to Paro on my behalf. Vayomer Moshe lifnei Hashem, hein ani aral sifosayim, veich yishma elai Paro. Moshe responds, and again, he's bringing up this inability to speak. He's not the articulate person. You got the wrong guy. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe re'ines haticha elokim lefaro v'Aaron achicha yeh neviyecha. Something now changes. See, I have made you a master over Paro, and Aaron, your brother, will be your neviyecha, your spokesman. Atot daber es kol asher atzaverko. V'Aaron achicha daber el Paro. V'shilach es bnei Yisrael mi'artzo. And what's going to happen now? Something transforms here, right? I shall command you, and Aaron, your brother, shall speak to Paro, and that he should send the children of Eretz Yisrael out of his land. Vani akshe eslev Paro, v'rebesi es hosai v'spososai be'eretz Mitzrayim. And but I shall harden Paro's heart. This is a very complicated pasuk, right? You're going to harden Paro's heart. It sounds like you're going to remove free will. Okay. And I shall multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. V'lo yishma alechem Paro. Paro will not heed you. I shall put my hand upon Egypt, and I shall take out my legions, my people, the children of Israel, from the land of Egypt. with great judgments. He's going to be punished. Boy, Paro is not going to listen, and there's going to be punishment. The Yadu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem benotisi as yadi al Mitzrayim lotzisi as bnei Yisrael mi mitocham. And Egypt will know that I am Hashem. When I stretch out my hand out over Egypt, I shall take the children of Israel out from among them. Finally, Vayas Moshe ve'Aaron. Here Moshe comes first again, right? Kashet ziva Hashem also kenasu. And the whole story ends with a pasuk, a fascinating pasuk right at the end of Shlishi. Moshe ben Shmonim Shana. You should know, by the way, Moshe was 80 years old, a young man. This is reinvigorating for the senior citizens of the world, right? That you don't have to retire right away, right? Moshe ben Shmonim Shana. Aaron ben Shalosh Shmonim Shana. And Aaron was the young man of 83. Bidabram el Paro. When all of this began and they spoke to Paro. No, it doesn't say. It says Fad Pez earlier in a few places. It's by the Sneh and Aral Sfasayim here. Okay. Let's continue on. Now, the Rav is going to Fad Peh, where does it appear? By the Sneh, by the burning bush story in Shmos. Okay. Kvad Peh or Kvad Lashon. Okay. Pasuk Zayin, Perek Zayin, Pasuk Aaron. The Aaron Achicha Yiniviecha. The Rav suggests that these words explain something in this text that we have overlooked. Take a look at how does Sheni begin? How does Sheni all the way to Shlishi? What does Sheni all the way to Shlishi do? It gives us a lineage, a list of lineage. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and then Levi, and all the way down to Moshe and Aaron. Right? We have a lineage. And the Rav says, why did you stop the narrative? The narrative was what? Let's get Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. Let's go talk to Paro. Let's get Paro to understand we are leaving servitude. You can't hold these people back. So what's pshat? What's happening here? We interrupt a narrative. And what occurs? Ladies, what occurs? An interruption. Sorry, station break. We're going to now tell you a lineage list. And the Rav wants to understand what's the flow. Why would you suddenly stop the story of Paro, of Hashem appointing Moshe and Aharon to go to Aaron and Moshe to do this? Why would that happen? So V'Aaron Achicha, the Rav suggests, we will be able to answer this by these words in Perek Zayin Pasuk Aleph. From Vav Yudalad through Vav Chav Zayin, the Torah interrupted with the lineage. Why did the Torah do this? What happened here is we have a story of how Hashem, the Mishaleach, Hashem is the Mishaleach. What's the Mishaleach? The sender wants to appoint Moshe to be his shaliach, his agent. There's a mishaleach, the one who sends. There's a shaliach, the one who is sent. The agent is the shaliach. The mishaleach is the one who is sending, right? The one who is sending appoints the shaliach, but what must the shaliach do? Except in halacha, the Mishaleach goes and searches out the Shaliach. That is true in life. You want somebody to represent you, you have to find that person. But what must that person, the Shaliach, do? He must accept his role. Shaliach Adam Kamoso. The agent takes your place as the sender, correct? Moshe sinned at the burning bush because the Mishaleach, Hashem, wanted him to be the Shaliach, and he refused. He said, I'm not capable. I'm not articulate. I can't represent. Moshe knew all too well that there is no shlichus without the agreement of the Shaliach. There's no agency without the agent agreeing to the mission. Moshe acted differently than the Avos, the Rav points out. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The Mishaleach wasn't Hashem. Hashem didn't appoint them. Avram searched for God, not God searched for Avram. In this story, Who's searching for whom?
God is searching.
Galeach Hashem is searching for whom?
For Moshe.
For Moshe. In the Avos, what's the story of Avram? Avram, the Medrash tells us, he was 3 years old when he starts discovering HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Does HaKadosh Baruch Hu start speaking to him right away? It takes another 72 years. He's going to be 75 before he hears the command of Lech Lecha. He's 72 years. Hashem is not searching out Avram. Avram is searching for Hashem. And that's and by the way, Avram is not called a Shaliach Hashem. Avram is called in Yeshayahu, Perek Mem Aleph, Pasuk Ches, a friend of Hashem. Avram is a friend of Hashem, not a Shaliach Hashem. Because to be a Shaliach, you have to have a Mishaleach, a person who's sending you as your agent. Moshe refused to be God's Shaliach. Because why? Why does Moshe refuse? How does Moshe refuse? Because Moshe is Anav Mikol Adam. We know, the Torah tells us, that's objective reality, not subjective reality. That's objective truth. Rabbi Cooperman, Zichrono Livracha Michlala, used to talk about subjective and objective truth. Subjective truth is when the character tells us what he's thinking. Objective truth is when a God tells us what the character is thinking. When the narrator in the Torah is God, it's objective truth. Objective truth is Anav Mikol Adam, because who said it? Not Moshe. Hashem said it about Moshe, so it's objective truth. And he says it about no other human being ever. He was an Anav Mikol Adam, unmatchable humility, and he could not think of himself as representing the Mishaleach. Who's the Mishaleach? Hashem. You want me to represent you? That Shaliach Adam Kamoso. The agent is like the messenger. I can't be your messenger. He argued that he was not capable. He had a speech impediment. He's at the burning bush. Hashem responded that, no, I'm going to do what? Go back to Perek Daled, Pasuk Tez Zayin. Right here in Shemos, Perek Daled, Pasuk Tez Zayin, page 310. V'diberu l'cho elam v'yahu yelecho lepeh v'atot yelo elokim. So who's going to be that? It's going to be Aaron. Aaron is going to be your spokesman, right? Aaron is supposed to speak on your behalf, correct? Aaron will be your mouthpiece. But by the way, at the burning bush, Aaron is to speak to whom? Bnei Yisrael. When you speak to, you're going to have two jobs. What's the job? There's one speaking to Bnei Yisrael, convincing them that they're getting out. Another job is representing us to Paro. Moshe at the sneh was to remain the spokesman to Paro. Aaron was to be the spokesman to Bnei Yisrael. Moshe accepted that arrangement at the sneh. After HaKadosh Baruch Hu convinces him, okay, Aaron is going to be the spokesman to Bnei Yisrael, you're going to be the spokesman to Paro, everything is set in motion. What happens at the end of Parshas Shemos?
Rabbi, wasn't Moshe...
What happens, Marsha? 1 second.
Oh, okay.
What happens? You guys got to know what happens. It all blows up. Moshe goes to Paro, and instead of improving the situation, remember the end of Parashat Shemos.
There's no straw.
He botches it, if you will, in his perspective. Paro does what? He increases the servitude. So Moshe comes back to Hashem and he says, you got the wrong guy. I told you I'm not the person for this. In all humility, I can't represent you. I did something obviously wrong. I not only can't speak to Bnei Yisrael, I can't speak to whom? To Paro. Now, here, the linchpin is our pasuk. Go now in Va'era. What is he going to do? Where am I? Whoops. Pasuk. Yeah.
Yadalah.
No, Pasuk Zayin Perek Aleph. Perek Zayin Pasuk Aleph. V'Yomer Hashem el Moshe, Re'in es haticha Elokim lefaro v'Aaron achicha Now, Aharon is going to become your co-shaliach. He's going to be changed. His role is going to change. His role, again, I want you to understand what was happening. At the sneh, Moshe said, no, I'm the wrong guy. What does Hashem say? I will bring Aaron into the equation. Aaron will speak on your behalf to Bnei Yisrael. You will speak to Paro. He goes to Paro.
You're suggesting that wasn't supposed to be the case?
He says
Hashem was not going to have Aaron his partner?
no, they were not going to be koshlichim. No, it happens now in Perek Zayin, Pasuk Aleph. Yeneviecha is now he's going to be your ko-shaliach. The Mishaleach, who's the Mishaleach, guys? Hashem. And Hashem does what?
He
Makes Aaron his ko-shaliach.
wasn't Moshe chosen.
Everything changes. Paro, therefore, thinks, not Paro. Moshe, therefore, realizes now that he has a ko-shaliach, and now everything is going to change. And now the Rav explains, I understand why the narrative changed, why the narrative was stopped with the lineage. I have to know who Aaron is. I have to be told who Aaron is. And so you stop the flow of the narrative because something else is going to occur. What's going to occur? The plan of Moshe being the shaliach for the mishaleach is now going to change. What is going to happen? We're going to have ko-shlichim. Aaron yeh neviyacha. Aaron is going to become your co-partner, and therefore, let me just finish this, or else we're never going to finish, and I see it's getting late. And I'll take questions at the very end. Okay. And you are going to be his co-partner, and his co-partner, well, we have to know who you are. So the narrative makes a lot, the Torah text makes a lot of sense now. How did the story stop suddenly with a story of lineage? Because that lineage is for letting us know who Aharon.
We don't know Aaron is his brother?
Just Aaron, his brother, but you have to know the whole family. You have to know the whole yichus. You have the whole yichus. You're going to get the yichus. You're going to get the yichus. That's why you're stopping. You're getting it from Moshe. You're also getting it from Moshe.
But then why did
You're getting it from
the burning bush?
Yeah.
More important, we don't understand who the Aharon is in this role, because Moshe was pointed by Hashem by the sneh. Moshe was pointed to be the shaliach by Hashem. Now Moshe refuses. Moshe and Hashem acquiesces and allows him to be a ko-shaliach. Okay, who is Aaron?
This doesn't tell you anything more about Aaron than it does about Moshe.
No,
not specific to Aaron.
You're being told that they are ko-shlichim. Okay? That's how the Rav understands why the text would stop. Continue on. The Rav then jumps to the most difficult pasuk of all, page 324. Vani akshe es leiv paro. And how does God harden Pharaoh's heart? And this is going to be repeated in numerous places in the Torah, where in the text here, right, he's going to harden Paro's heart, and we're going to be told this over and over again. And the Rav resolves this issue in a novel fashion, because we understand removing free will is a big philosophical problem. The Rav explains that at the time of Egypt, of Exodus, the largest manufacturer in the world of cotton, linen, and other products was Egypt. Egypt was the center of the world of its time. It was the powerhouse of the world of its time. It's the United States of its time. Egypt, only the difference is Egypt attributed its success to the slave laborer economy. They had slave laborers, and so Paro attributed, oh, my success is I have a built-in economic success. I have slave laborers, right? The slaves were responsible for building the massive storehouses that we're told, right? Creating an economy that allowed the upper echelon of society to live a high standard of living. They like it because they have slaves. So Paro thinks, that slaves are the secret to his economic success. Paro therefore thought his whole economy would collapse if the slaves were removed from the equation. What God did not share with Paro is the knowledge that the emancipation of the slaves would not destroy his economy, just the opposite. He didn't realize what we know now from American history, 19th century, though I understand one of our candidates for president didn't get this right in a debate, right? But what he didn't, I don't know, she was missing that day in school. She missed that. She must have not felt well. And she's such a good candidate, but go figure that one out. Anyhow, as somebody else said, you never know. The pressure of a debate is it's intense. It's intense.
Get the vote.
Yeah, whatever. Okay. Anyhow, Paro didn't realize the reality that we know of 19th century America. What was it? After the Civil War, the emancipation of the black slaves, did it destroy the economy of America, or did the economy, independent of slave laborers, grow way beyond what anybody thought? It grew much faster. Once we destroyed slave labor, our wealth and our strength, it grew unbelievably so. In the Rav's words, and I quote the Rav, God never interfered directly with Paro's freedom of choice. He just simply withheld an insight. He withheld an insight that Paro needed to know, if you will. Paro thought that the emancipation of his labor would destroy his economy. And he didn't know that that's not true. When you think about it, the Rav notes, now you understand the whole structure of the makos. Watch this. The first 5 makos are blood, frogs, lice, noxious animals, and boils. What do the first 5 do? Inflict misery on the people of Egypt. What's the next group do? Well, that's the destruction of livestock, the burning hail, and locust. What does that do? Forget about choshech and makos b'choros. What did the next 3 do? Number 6, 7, and 8. What do? They destroy the economy. The first 5 create misery, physical misery. The next 3 destroy the economy. In other words, Paro was shown, you want to be stubborn? You're not going to let your slave laborers leave? Guess what your stubbornness is going to do? You think it's going to help your economy. What's it going to do? It's going to destroy your economy. It did the exact opposite. The opulent society that the slaves built was now in total ruins. What God was teaching Paro is there are consequences to one's choices. You're going to be stubborn. You're not going to let the slave laborers out because you think your economy necessitates it. I'm going to destroy the economy. I'm going to show you that your stubbornness has consequences. Finally, so the Rav's novel, is everybody hearing this? The Rav's novel interpretation, Va'ani akshe eslave Paro, he hardens Paro's heart. He makes Paro stubborn. What's the stubbornness? I can't allow these slaves to leave. My economy will be destroyed. Not realizing that if you let the slaves out, your economy will grow, because slaves are not a very productive process of labor. They by definition, if they don't have their own benefit, exactly. If you're not motivated, you're not going to produce the amount that you can. And that's exactly what American history taught us. Once you're motivated and you have you have a part of the action, you're going to be motivated, right? Okay. So that's how the Rav understands V'ani Akshe slave Paro. Finally, the last pasuk, Moshe ben Shmonim Shana, Aaron ben Shalosh Shmonim Shana. Why is the Torah telling us the age of Moshe and Aaron at the very end of this story? What is the purpose of that? It teaches us that from the time Moshe left Egypt to save his life, right? He left Egypt to save his life. How old was he? He was 20. So another 60 years will transpire that he's in Midian, right? 60 years he sits in Midjan till he's 80, right? It teaches us there are points in history of Judaism that are dynamic, and there are points in history where there are silence and no dynamism, no creativity whatsoever. We live in a generation for the past 100 years in one of the most dynamic periods of Jewish history. We've been zoche to see one of the most dynamic periods of history ever, the rise of the state of Israel. It's unbelievable. If we think about it, there hasn't been a period in Jewish history like the one we live in. We're zoche to see this. Oh, yes, it's a difficult period, but it's a creative period. It's not a silent period. Moshe, for 60 of his years, there was silence. Then the Rav notes, this will explain something else. For hundreds of years in Egypt, there's silence. There's no creativity on the Jewish scene for hundreds of years, 210 years. It's silence. We don't even hear Bnei Israel cry out. Remember that from last week's Parsha. Finally, Moshe motivates them to moan. Suddenly they get a voice to their problem and everything begins to change. In other words, what Bnei Israel, what the Torah is telling us, by Moshe being told where he's 80 and Aaron being told that he's 83, up until this date, we had to wait patiently to see Jewish history evolve. Sometimes you have to wait patiently to see Jewish history evolve and become dynamic. There are periods in Jewish history, hundreds of years sometimes, where it's just, we roll with the punches. Nothing really creative, nothing really exceptional. I'm just pointing that out, that we live, and we should realize that we live in a generation of unbelievable opportunity on so many levels. On so many levels. You see this when you go to Eretz Yisrael. You see this even now during this war. Somebody pointed out to me, and he's correct on one of the missions. He's correct. The difference now is that we can fight back. They can't create a pogrom and there's no response. There is a response, but there was never like that for hundreds, thousands of years. The shilas that now Chazal, our Rabbanim, our poskim are having are all new because we have a Medina. We never had a Medina. We never had a tzal. We never had an army that to defend us in thousands of years. What, back to the Navi when we had, to the Torah, right, the Nevi'im when we had an army? When was the last time we had an army? Thousands of years ago. Now we have new shilas that we have to answer. And boy, there are big shilas that they're answering. The ethics of war, etc., have to be answered. It's an opportunity that has to be met, and it is being met. And when you go to Eretz Yisrael on these missions, you see that. You see it's unbelievable. That's the commitment and the unity of the people, that they realize that they'll be given an opportunity to defend themselves. It's true, we're paying a price. No question about it. You pay a price when you defend yourself. But that price is nothing like the price that we had to go through the Holocaust, through all the pogroms, when we couldn't pick up a weapon. Do you know why we were in the fields that we were in? Why were we money? And the non-Jews made fun of it. Not made fun of it. They made it a point of anti-Semitism. You know why we were money lenders? We weren't allowed to be anything else. They let us, it's always, we don't want you here. Go to Palestine. We come to Palestine, get out. You can't win, right? The same thing. We don't want you in these fields, so you ended up in the money lending.
And taverns.
What?
And
taverns, right? Because we were the only ones that were trusted. They couldn't trust themselves. So we were the only ones that trusted. And then they hated us because, hey, they had to pay ribbis to us, right? Right.
I just want to go back.
Yeah,
I don't totally understand that answer, that again back to the lineage, because I don't think that you get a better explanation of who Aaron is than at the beginning of Sefer Shemot, where it says Virach, when he doesn't want to do it, he's being very humble. He says, don't worry, your brother is sees you v'racha v'samach b'libo. Only Hashem knows, again, the objective.
Right.
So that speaks loads. And then at a second
You're
thing,
describing
one second,
a
one second,
personality.
1 second. And then you go on and Hashem tells Aaron, go greet your brother. Usually there are, and it always says, Vayasuchen, to the letter of the law, they listen to what Hashem says, Vayomru, they do exactly. But over here, not only does he go and greet him, Vayishaklo, he does extra. He goes beyond what Hashem tells him, he kisses him. I think that tells you more about who is this Aaron, than telling him he married Elisheva, he had these
Okay,
kids.
so let me
Yeah.
explain. What you're describing is a personality. What the Torah is describing by doing lineage is a very important lesson. Yichus is very important. Where
But that's Moshe's yichus. He doesn't have a
it's
separate
Moshe
yichus.
and Aaron's
So
yichus.
why did it stop? Then I should have heard about. Then I don't understand why it's there because Aaron's there. If it's Moshe's yichus,
Because it's
not
explaining
if
how.
it's a new person that's not related to him, I understand that. But this is
So the
it's
Rav is explaining.
identical yichus to Moshe.
He's explaining how did they both become co-shlichim? You should know, by the way, you got to know the yichus. That's what they're doing, not the personality. You're 100% right. We have personality description in the Torah, beautifully described by you. But what the Torah is saying, and the Rav is
But then it's
arguing,
about both of them.
Yes.
Why were they both?
Yeah,
Not-
but why
not
not?
Aaron.
but why now? Because now Aaron takes on a co-shlichus.
But
So
if
now,
Aaron wouldn't have gotten the shlichut, you wouldn't have heard about
not
the
here,
lineage of Moshe.
not here, not here, not here.
He did
Not
speak
here.
about the
Not
lineage
here.
of Moshe.
Yes,
In the
Moshe.
previous chapter, we spoke about the
What?
lineage of Moshe. You brought up the lineage of Moshe, and you also brought up the fact that he was brought up as a prince, and that's why Hashem chose him.
That's not the lineage. That's a description of how he grew up. That's his background. That's a biographical.
That's why Hashem chose him, though, not even with the
No,
lineage.
the Rav
Chose him.
wants to understand a textual. You can agree or disagree. You can disagree with the Rav. You don't like it, that's fine. But
Yeah.
outside of that, I hear that you don't like that, but everything else I think you like. Okay.
Okay, I have one more
Bad.
question.
Not bad. She doesn't like one point that I said. 1 second, let
I
me
just
go.
have one
Yeah,
question.
Marsha,
Rabbi.
yeah. Okay.
I just have one more question regarding the burning bush. Wasn't Bnei Israel crying out, and Hashem heard it, and that's why he connected with Moshe by the burning bush, because he said he heard the groans of Bnei Israel, so they weren't silent.
When did they hear? When only Moshe then takes their defense, remember?
But I
when
thought
did they
in the
start-
burning bush, that's why
The burning bush post dates when Moshe already went out and killed the Egyptian and right?
I see,
right?
okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
yes,
So
yes.
I just wanted a quick question. So at the snap, Aaron doesn't become the Kohen yet? Does Aaron become the Kohen when he gets the, because Moshe was originally supposed to be Kohen.
Yeah,
Moshe was
right.
supposed to be Kohen. So when he says that he becomes the Navi, does that mean, is that the reason, let's say, he gives a lineage? Because he says Elazar, Itamar, it gives out a whole.
Nothing
lineage
means
right before.
spokesman.
So nothing to do with that he got the kahuna now,
No. The kahuna is going to come later.
but it's not.
But he
because
is,
refused.
but does become the Kohen.
But
But
it's because
yes.
he refused leadership, no?
the
that's
Medrash
that's
says,
what-
yes.
that's what I have.
Yes.
Okay, so he doesn't get it here necessarily.
No, here they become co-partners. And the Rav then built a beautiful structure to describe style of leadership. You do, why would you don't become co-partners if you're identical,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right, this,
Skills.
right, but there's complement. Yes, you had a question.
I'm confused here. You said that he was not kosher yet, but from the beginning, it says afterwards Moshe and Aaron came and said to Pharaoh, so said Hashem, God of Israel, set up my people. So that was from the beginning. Moshe and Aaron were kosher, yeah, from the very, very beginning.
Where are you?
Page 215.
200.
330.
Yeah, they go together, but they're not, but Moshe, 1 second, 3. Where is it?
315. 313. Page 313.
Yeah, what pasuk?
5, I mean.
No, three-
I'll say
three-
1.
Three.
Perek 5.
Vayama Paro hein Rabbi Matama. Where do you, I don't see what you're looking at.
I'm looking at this page, rabbis. This one.
Hmm.
Chapter 13. 5, and afterwards,
Bachar bo Moshe v'Aaron v'Yomar Paro. Okay. Kol Hashem. Yeah. Shalach Samivi. They do go together, but who's speaking? So up until this point, it's Moshe speaking, but Moshe then botches. Moshe is the spokesman. He's appointed to that. They go together as a force, but Aaron is standing there. Aaron is not speaking. It's Moshe that's speaking.
okay.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Very good.
Thank
Well,
you.
next week, yes, next week Bezrat Hashem Shiur.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
Rabbi.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you,
Okay.
Rabbi. It was great.
My pleasure.
Very enjoyable.